Hey, Eldon back here with another episode of Crazy Dad's Garage. We're going to be working on the rat rod some more today. I'll flip the camera around here and kind of talk to you about what I'm doing. I'm going to be doing a bunch of rust repair on this thing. I've got it, got the floor put in it, and now basically I've got to replace the cab corners, front and back. And I'm going to do that. I don't think I'm going to bore you with a deep how-to video on this. I think it's just going to be a follow along and see the progress that I make video instead. There's guys out there that are definitely more expert than I am. I will tell you, I'm going to put a plug in here for another guy on his YouTube channel who I really admire for the stuff that he does, and that's Fitzy's Fabrication. He's out of Canada, and the guy's he thinks like I do. He's showing us how to replace stuff that we might not normally fix because we can't find a replacement panel or because we don't have the money to do it. So anyway, the guy does a fantastic job. Again, it's Fitzy's Fabrication channel on YouTube. Excellent detail on how to replace rusted out panels and rebuild panels that you can't find, or even ones that you just don't want to spend the money for. So I am going to jump in here and just do a simple walkthrough on the things that I'm doing. I'll show you what I'm going to do here. I'll flip the camera around and kind of bring you up to speed. So here's my truck cab. I got it turned up on its back because I'm going to be working on these front cab corners to start with. As you can see, they're gone. And yeah, I've done a little bit of cutting to get these pieces out, but for whatever reason, they rusted right along this fender line and then into, through the inside wall of the cab there. And there's also a U-shaped channel that goes right down through here. And I've got all those parts off of my parts truck for both sides. Here's an example of them over here. So while these are better than what I've got to work with, they still even have some rust that needs to be repaired in them. So I'm going to do that in this process too. I just got, this metal is good on this one where it's not on my one right there. So you can't see very good there, sorry. But anyway, but this is good enough that it gives me a pattern to work with, and I will I'll end up cutting out and replacing this rusted part of this piece right here as well as that one. But I've got all the parts that I need, all the metal I need came with the truck on the parts truck, so I'll be in good shape there. So we're going to launch into that process. I think I'm actually going to start with this one on this passenger side here, and I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do yet. So I don't need to replace this door jamb piece itself. It's in pretty solid shape on this truck. So I'm going to end up cutting it off of there. And I think, I wasn't going to do this, but I think I am going to cut those 3 pieces apart that I'm going to need off of there, because I still do need to do repairs for them before I get them on here, and it will make it easier to fit them when they're separate. So I'm going to do that. That'll be the first thing I do, is get those 3 cut apart, and then that'll let me launch into that. So over here I've got, as I welded the this seam together here, I got to here where I felt like I had good metal to that point. And so at this point it starts getting bad, and it's really just this section right here that's the worst. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, it might be just as easy to just replace that section on here on this floor. And it's got a little bit of body work that needs to happen here. I got a little crease running down there and out into here. But it might be easier just to leave those on there, replace that in place. And I got to get up here, and this layer here is bad. This is the piece that overlaps that. So I'll need to replace that. Actually, I'll just get it out of the way so I can replace up in through here. So I think that's where I'm going to start. I had not looked at this close enough to realize that had more good metal in it than I thought it did. So I'll probably do that. I think that'll make my job easier rather than trying to cut out a great big patch panel out of the thing. So anyway, that's where I'm going to head, and I will come back to you as I get those pieces apart and get this cut out and get my replacement piece ready to go in. So I decided to go ahead and cut that corner out because even though I had it straightened, it was still really floppy and oil canny. So this one is a nice solid straight piece, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. So what I did was I removed my lip from down here and the lip that was coming down here so that I could get this perfectly aligned. I've cut it out there where I want it, and I've got this hole and that hole to use as alignment holes. So I've tried to get it centered on them. I think you can see that there. I got it clamped in place. This hole's missing from my underpiece, but I also took this big C-channel piece and got it fastened in place here where it needs to go. So I had a reference point for this corner because I wanted to make sure that I got this corner lined up with that there, so that my side piece where it comes and rolls in there would fit good. So I've got that where I want it. Now my next step, I'm going to tack this in place, and then I'll come back and, like I said, I'll go to that Fitzy's Fabrication because I learned a trick from him that I'd never seen before in all my years of doing stuff like this. And that is to tack this in place laying over the top of it so you got your exact location. And then he takes a grinder and he cuts in at a 45-degree angle here, and then is able to push these down. So it's like this piece right here. See if you can see that from the side where it's up now. If you have the two pieces cut apart, you can push them down where they're the same level and then re-tack it. And cut it loose up here, push it down and re-tack it. And as you do that and go along, work your way up there, by the time you get up there, you're going to have this seam all perfect. And I have fought that battle for a long time, and kudos to him for demonstrating that to us on YouTube. So that's the process I'm going to use to put this chunk of metal in place here. And we'll come back and we'll piece in the next part. This corner of the floor repaired here, and I really like the way that turned out. So we ended up with this little piece along here, this big piece here, triangle to take out some rust there, and up here on top we had a pretty thin piece right there. So we've got solid metal in there now. I really like it. It's not moving. I've got it spot welded along here. And so we are rock solid again in that corner, which is a massive improvement over where it was. So now our next project is going to be to fix this piece down in here. And that piece is supposed to come all the way up here. Let's see, it's got a lip that goes over and wraps over this, and it spot welds down the side here. And I think it ties in along there. And then I'm going to reach in here. I'm going to try to patch it along here, and then I'll probably take this rust out up into this hole somewhere. I think my patch that I've got goes from this corner straight down through that hole. So I'll probably do that and go most of the way down across there. And then the bottom section of even my patch part over here is pretty rusted out. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Let's go over here and flip to this thing. So here's that heater hole, and this is much more solid metal than the one in the other truck here. So I think I'm going to try to use this part and probably make myself a cut down along there until I get to over here. This is where it starts to get bad, and it's bad to here So I think if I cut it off right above this rib here, and then I can piece that in with a flat piece of metal, and it'll look like it's supposed to be there. I won't have the ribs, but I'll have a good solid piece of metal. So I think that's the direction I'm going to go. Haven't 100% decided on that, but we'll start taking this apart and then getting it up in there to where we can start patching it together in there. So I will do that and come back and show you my progress. Again, I'm not going to bore you with all the gory detail of this. This took a long time to do, but it's okay. I'm happy with it. I'm learning some things and coming out with a nice result. I'm really pleased with how solid it is. So, all right, we will be back. Okay, we're back. Now we're moving into repairing this inner panel right here. The piece that comes down is actually the kick panel or the toe kick or whatever we call that. Can't remember. Off the top of my head anyway, we're going to do that. So what a first thing that I've done, I've come in here, I've cut out the rusty part of my old one down along in there. And what I still have to do is I have to preserve this hole right here, which is where the heater, it's the heater air, takes its intake in through this. But it was rusty right up to and into that hole. So I've got myself a mark there right here. There was a notch in the metal where it came across and then went up to go over there. And so I've gone from that point right there straight down, took some measurements to get it straight in there. Now I've taken my other piece that I had to work with here. This is off the parts truck, and you see here's the bottom part of that hole. So I've got myself a line across there. And then what's happening, well, okay, here's the other line that I have down that runs along the door. And I'm going to tack weld that in there all the way down. So the other thing I'm having to do is repair this piece because it did have some rusted out spots. So I took a piece of the one that I cut out of there that had a good chunk of that rib in it, and I'm patching that in there. I've got some rust holes here and here that I'm also going to repair in this process before I put that on. And as you can see, I don't have the entire panel. This part of this one was rusted out bad, so I'm going to put this in because this has got the bulk of my shapes in it that I need. So I'm going to get this in place, and then I will build myself a patch panel there to go on down to the bottom of the floor. So that's what I'm working on. Next thing I'll probably show you is when I get this piece tacked in and ready to go. I'm making the repairs on it right now, so I got myself a solid piece of metal there. We'll be back when we get to that point as we stitch this rusty piece of junk back together. Okay, boys and girls, I think we're ready to put this panel in. In a funny turn of events here, I had to patch my patch panel. How do you like that? I think I got all those rusted through spots taken care of while preserving my character lines and holes that I needed and things like that. So this ought to be interesting to do one-handed. Sit in there like that. I'm sure I'll have to get this set up off camera, but I've got to align my points of that heater hole up. So I'll get that done, and then I'm going to clamp it in place here and be able to tack weld myself down right there, and I should be in business for getting this thing put in place. So I'm going to get that thing all put in and welded up, and then we'll come back and I'll make this piece right here, and that should wrap up that inner part. So I'll be back here when I get that done. Alrighty, got her. It's all tack welded in. I haven't finished welded it, but I've got everything, got it where I wanted. That went together really well. My hole looks good right there. That's the critical piece of the whole thing. So now I've got my second piece of this cut and shaped and fastened in, and you can see I've got it Going to make a seam up here right below this ridge. We'll come along here up, and then we've got a seam down there. And the one thing I decided to do differently here, the factory piece bends here and comes down this way. And that was just going to be really complicated to make. So what I've done instead is taken it out and laid it on top of the floor. And I will spot weld it down to the floor then, and we'll weld solid around here, some things like that. So that's where we're at right now, and I'm going to be getting that one tacked in place. And that will have the inside kick panel part of this done. It's kind of fun to go. Another piece of my parts cab right there. It was part of the transmission tunnel. I actually had a curve that was close to what I wanted, so cut it out and been using it. All right, there we go. So we got it all tacked in place. That's the standard procedure here. I got to go through and finish weld it, but I've got spot welded along here, and then I got a bead run back in there, and spot welds and a bead tying it to the floor. So that gives me now the second piece of my corner. So I got my floor part fixed. I've got all of this in here now, and the only thing I lost in this process, there was another one of these rolled beads right here on the stock floor. But this is not a total restoration, and so I don't really care. And even if I was going for more of a restoration, I probably would even put something over the inside of the kick panel. So most of this stuff, like right in here, is going to be hidden when I get the heater bolted back in place. So you won't even see it. And this stuff, we'll clean it up and make it look good on the inside. If I was going to do a full paint job on it, I'd be in good shape here. I can go ahead and body work that, the parts that are going to show. So the next thing I'll do is go in here and get this all finished welded then. I'm not going to worry about grinding off this side of it because obviously you'll never see it. But I'm going to get that all set up, and then we will be ready to start putting in our next piece, which is that big C-channel piece that goes along here. So I'll get all set up and back to that point, and we'll be back. So we got her all welded in there solid. I took the grinder and cleaned up this area right here because that's the only spot that my new piece is going to actually touch, and that would hold it out away from where it needs to be. So aligning this thing's pretty simple. It just needs to line up here with this corner, this edge. I'll probably run a bead along here, and then it needs to line up with the corner of the floor right there, and it's pretty much going to go in just like that. So got myself all my holes drilled for my plug welds and cleaned up my metal surfaces. So I will be welding this one into place next. And it's kind of nice because now we're past all this fabricating stuff. This is going a lot faster, but we'll get this tacked in place, and then we'll actually be ready to start repairing the skin of it. So that's where we'll go to at this point. Well, that made a fairly significant difference in things in a fairly quick amount of time compared to what I've been doing. Got that piece in there. Got ourselves a bead along there. All the old spot welds refilled. And the reason for these little fillet welds here was because in the process of replacing this, we didn't get it probably bowed out quite as much as it did. So I had to get creative. I stuck a long bar down through that hole and pried out here. That let me get these two done. These were all pretty good. Right here, these spot welds had gone all the way through, so I just put myself some 1/4-inch bolts and nuts washers on there and sucked those together, tacked those in place so that I could then get back in there and fill that. But that piece is all ready to go. Now my next thing is to get my skin up here and figure out what I can do with it. Let's see if I can even find it here. That's my other side. Nope, that's my far side. This is this side here. Okay. So here's what we have to work with. And it's been somewhat damaged, and you see some rust through in there. Clear around down to the bottom. So I'm going to have to patch it in as I go, but it's infinitely more solid than what that one was. So probably the first thing I'm going to do is cut this rusty edge off here all the way along there. Get it out of the way because I want to clean this up so I got a good surface to weld to and get all the crusty, rusty stuff out of there. And then I'm going to come back in here and start fitting this thing. So I'm not going to use the louvers. I'm going to come down generally in the neighborhood of that long scratch you see along there, and get outside of, let's do this. So I'm probably going to come down somewhere in this neighborhood so I can get outside of this rust, because the rust only goes back to there. It's not bad back in here. So we get that out and get ourselves down into this area and see what we got. So I'll start cutting that out, trimming up my patch panel, and come back when I've got a panel ready to fit onto there. Been ready to go together. Got that trimmed back. Got my new piece here cut and fitted. It looks really good. So I'll use that hole as my alignment hole, the big one there, and get back over here and do this one, and that will give me a starting point to start stitching this piece back onto there. And then I'll, as I get it in place, and I'll start dealing with these rust problems. But mostly I'm going to come up here and get this top into place first. So that's where we're at. You'll see that as I get it stitched together. All right, here she is, all stitched in there. I got my louvers saved, and you know, they were not rusty, so that worked out good. I just came down there and went right along this edge here. Got myself just a little bit left of the edge, and then use it, and that actually helps stiffen the whole thing up a lot, so you're not getting out in the middle and warping things. I do have a slight warp right here. That was caused by pulling these two together, but it's okay. As bad as this thing was beat up, it turned out really good. It just tying it all together here and doing these spot welds up and through here, it actually bowed it back into the right position, 99% of it except that spot. So let's see, I had a little place here where this lip for the door was missing, so we're tacking that in place, and then I'll cut this off across here at the right place, and then put a little vertical piece back in there behind it to go down, back down into here to remold that door jamb area. So then my next big project's going to be getting rid of this rust right here. And judging by what I'm seeing here, I think I can take a flat piece of metal and set it in here and lay it behind this one once I cut it off. And then as I pull this one down to it and run my bead along there, I think I will reform that fender line. And so I should be in good shape to do that. I'll have to see how much of this is actually salvageable here, because I know definitely I'll get down to this area, I'm going to want to cut down here and replace that chunk too. So that's where I'm at, what I'm working on right now. Still got to drill a few holes and do some other things. I need to finish trimming this up down here so we got straight along that edge. I have a fender bolt hole that's supposed to go right here, so we're going to get that drilled. There's another inner fender bolt hole, so you've got 3 of them here, 1, 2, and there's supposed to be a third one down in here, so I'll have to get that drilled. And then I'll go back and get all my welds ground off and everything. But what we had to do here, so I cut out this flange part and I put a flat piece of metal back in there behind the actual skin. Then my skin was good down into here, and yeah, really I think I cut it down here like this, and so then I had to piece in this section of the skin here, and I laid it over the top of that and weld it along there, so that when I grind that off, I will actually have a line that'll continue this line all the way down, and it actually goes to here and stops. And so that's how we got that done. Oh, I guess I still haven't finished this. I got to come up under here and get myself that little piece done there. So I'll get on that next. I'll get those holes drilled, get things ground or cut off there, and then that will lead us to where we are. We've got a nice solid cab corner again. And is this a lot of work? Yeah, it's a lot of work. It would have been easier to go out and buy patch panels for this if they're all made. I'm sure I could have got the skin here, but I don't know about the inner pieces. But this has kind of just been a fun challenge for me to be able to get this put back together. So I've got a nice rock solid corner there now. Again, this is never going to be a show truck. It's going to be a rat rod style truck. I don't know whether, I haven't decided exactly which direction I'm going to go. So using this older, somewhat rusty metal is not going to be the end of the world. And if I ever did decide that I wanted to do a full-blown paint job on it, I'd probably send it in and have it chemically stripped anyway to get all of the rust out of there. But I'm very happy with the way this is turning out. Be able to come over here if I want to. I can put a little Bondo on it when I'm ready and kind of final shape that in. But I'm excited. I really like the way this has turned out. So I'm going to do those last few steps, and then I'll be back and we'll wrap this up and show you the final picture. It up quite a bit. Probably got an hour plus worth of grinding in here, getting those all smoothed up. But our welds all smoothed up all the way along here. Our plug welds along in there. Got these done. I've kind of gotten back in there. I'm going to have to get a different tool, different kind of grinder to reach that. But I don't think I'll mess with the plug welds down along there. But I want to get that done. I still haven't finished this section. But what I did start on right now was plugging up this last little bit of the door jamb here. What I did was I cut this piece of metal right here. Probably not seeing that very good, are you? But anyway, I cut it so that it fit around the curvature of the jamb here, and then I've got it welded in place. And what my next thing will be is I'll take my grinder and cut it off here. And then when I weld these two edges back together here, that's going to give me a nice rounded edge that'll match this part. So that's where I'm at right now. We'll get that trimmed off and welded in, and then I'll be back. I'll probably grind that off, and I think I'll finish grinding the floor off, and then I'll be back and kind of show you the finished product here. Okay, we're going to wrap up this video here. I've sprayed some black paint on that because I just want to preserve it so it doesn't get any more rusty than it has been. But that turned out with a pretty decent little repair there on that corner, which was just an absolute disaster. If you remember, it looked a lot like this one. And to go from that to what we've got now, massive step forward, and works great on our rat rod project here. So I'm happy with it. I'm going to sign off here with this episode of Crazy Dad's Garage, and we will be back with you as we move on to the next step of fixing this cab, which will probably be to do one of the back cab corners. They're pretty rusty. So that'll be our next part of the project. I'm not going to do a duplicate of both sides of the repair because essentially they're the same thing. So, well, there we go. Welcome. We're glad you're joining us here. I hope you're learning something. More than anything else, what I hope you figure out from what I'm doing is that no matter what you've got to start with, it's doable. There's lots of different stuff that you can do to turn your pile of scrap metal into something that's fun to cruise around in. All right, we'll be back. This is Eldon signing off for Crazy Dad's Garage.